Hello everyone, welcome to Snap or Pass. My name's MJ and today we're looking at Scorn. She's a 1-2. When you discard this, return it to your hand and give +2 power to itself and one of your cards in play. This is Snap or Pass, so we discussed the Spotlight week that Scorn is in, the mechanics of the card, favourable locations and bad locations. We give you some awesome deck ideas. I've got 3 interesting discard decks for you this time. And ultimately we say, is it a snap or pass? If you're new, please subscribe. We're trying to hit 2,099 subscribers. And if you want to skip to a specific section, there are chapters available if you're incredibly disrespectful. That's like the 3rd time I've made that joke. Will I keep doing it? Who knows? We're already broken. We've already frame break. Let's talk about the Spotlight week that Scorn is in. She's alongside Jean Grey and Sebastian Shaw. So it's an interesting week. We've got a couple of almost like Silver Surfer style cards here. Obviously they're both 3 cost. One that firmly fits in the archetype, which is Sebastian Shaw. If you don't have Sebastian Shaw, he is a key piece of the Silver Surfer deck. He'll be in probably every Silver Surfer deck until the end of time, because he alone is able to get to so much power in that deck that he sort of single-handedly does one location, and then typically your other location is the Brood. So yeah, really nice if you like the Silver Surfer archetype, or you want to improve your Silver Surfer archetype. And by the way, I think this variant is pretty cool. Jean Grey, I like the variant less, and she has struggled to find her way into a specific deck that is actually good. I'm not too sure on her. I don't think she's great. She's a Series 4. Shaw is a Series 5. So the value is like middling. It's not a bad week. I'd say it's not the best week. Anyway, let's talk about Scorn and the mechanics. Her mechanics. So, as you can see, this is a very specific card. It fits firmly into discard. There's pretty much no other deck you would ever use this in. It has to synergize with discard to be any good. So, yeah, it's a very pigeonholed card. Let's talk about the specific mechanics though. So Scorn, when she returns to your hand, it's the original version of that card. It's not a copy. So with Swarm and Scorn, they literally do a similar thing and they sound the same. I hope this doesn't get confusing. Swarm, it's already confusing me. Swarm creates copies that go into your hands. That is relevant for locations like, is it Pachapatipon, where cards that didn't start in your deck get +2 power there. Scorn isn't like that, so it's the original card returning to your hand. She is easy to target with Colleen Wing as a 1-cost card, and then combo with Blade. So yeah, 2 specific callouts here. Colleen Wing, often going to be able to target Scorn. If you build your deck around Scorn, or that kind of deck with that kind of synergy, you may only have her as your only 1-cost card in the deck, in which case Colleen will always hit her. But the great thing about her is because she returns to your hand, you'll then be able to target her easily with Blade, and that will happen throughout the game. You'll be able to regularly hit Scorn with Blade, so that's going to feel really good, and definitely release Endorphins. Her pros, she's a huge power output for a 1-cost card, and her buffs will be split among multiple cards. So she herself can grow in very, very great power, but she's also giving decent power. So she's a great card at growing herself as a single location scaler for just her. But she also spreads out her power to potentially multiple locations wherever you've got your cards. So that's really good that she's able to affect both wide and tall. That's really good. She can be played at the end of the game to capitalise on that scaling on herself. Now, you might be in situations where you actually don't play Scorn. Maybe you only got a couple of discards off on her. She's like a 1/6, which is still really good, but maybe there's a difficult situation. It could be something like you've been hit by an Iceman or something and one of your 5-cost cards now costs 6 and you really need to play that instead of Scorn. So there will be situations where you don't always play her. However, she is going to be of such high value herself, often better than like a, well, I would say Martyr. Martyr will try and move to lose you the game. But if you've ever played Martyr and you've been able to circumvent her downside, you'll actually know that she feels incredibly strong. So Scorn often being able to be played as a 1/6 is going to feel even better than that. So that's going to feel great. She creates a new way to play discard with a very different late game. Often with standard kind of discard decks, you would have like an Apocalypse endgame where you're actually literally playing out an Apocalypse, if you're not waiting for it to be discarded by Dracula, of course. But just generally with discard, there are very obvious and typical ways that that deck would finish the game. Whereas this is going to change it a bit. Because you'll pretty much always want to play Scorn on the final turn of the game, it sort of means that you can't actually include 6-cost cards in your deck. Now, maybe you do include Apocalypse, but the difficulty with that is that you're probably going to want to put your time and resources into discarding Scorn, which is often going to be playing different cards than Sif, who specifically target Apocalypse. You're probably going to be playing more Colleen and trying to duplicate Colleen's effect, maybe. So you're basically not going to be playing 6-cost cards, so it's a very different way to play it. She is easily and uniquely targetable via a few different things. So lowest cost card, she's obviously going to be that. Odd cost, so this brings in Swordmaster maybe, creates a great opportunity for Swordmaster. We'll have a look at some decks in a minute, and of course I've featured Swordmaster in one of them. And Rightmost as well, so Blade. So she's actually a very easy card to discard. Her cons. Sometimes you'll invest energy into scaling Scorn but be unable to play her, so I sort of touched on this a minute ago. There may just be situations where you just can't get her out. I was about to read the first con again, but I won't do that. You've already heard it. Good. She gives unpredictable buffs. You won't be able to control who her buff hits. It may hit the multiple card. It may hit the same card multiple times, and that could be particularly problematic if you are playing cards like Swordmaster and you hit Swordmaster twice. You've instantly made Swordmaster a Shang-Chi target. So there's little downsides like that might be difficult. And she's partially predictable for your opponent. They may anticipate an X-statted Scorn to be played as part of your final turn. So they might see that you've got a 6 power, 8 power, maybe even 10 power Scorn, and it may become very predictable where you're going to play that card. And speaking to 10 power, maybe that's going to be a Shang-Chi target as well. So yeah, there's an element of predictability there that she has. But let's talk about locations. There's actually surprisingly lots to talk about here. So good ones, obviously the discard locations are, or I should say may generally be good. You got Weapon X, which discards a card to draw a card, and you got Sokovia, which discards a random card. Now, both of these do discard a random card, so it's going to feel absolutely horrific when it hits your Colleen Wing, but it's going to feel absolutely incredible when it hits your Scorn. So yeah, comme ci, comme ça, but generally might be good. And you know, you're synergizing towards discard, so Shuri's Lab is going to feel awesome. If you build up your Scorn to be like a 1/8, that's 3 discards. You can play that on the final turn of the game, or sooner, depending on what happens, what's crackulating, and get a really strong extra buff in Shuri's Lab. Like, basically, you don't need to invest much energy into that location in order to win it, and your opponent probably will need to invest more. Krakoa is going to be a very interesting one, similar to Shuri's Lab. You can actually wait until towards the end of the game to play Krakoa, like, well, not on turn 6, but on turn 5, you can drop your 1/6, 1/8 power Scorn onto Krakoa and get not only a really strong power in there, but get a massive boost of power to the top card of your deck, and then you'll be able to play that on the final turn of the game. Obviously, leaving it that late, there is a little bit of extra unpredictability for you, and it may be difficult for you to work around, but it's an opportunity. Basically, high power, low cost, so that's how you can capitalize on that location. Bar Sinister is a very interesting one, because you can do something like Colleen Wing on Bar Sinister. Discard Scorn 4 times. That gives you 4 lots of +2 buffs. A couple of those may well hit Colleen. They may well all hit Colleen if that's the only location you've been. It's turn 2, right? This might be turn 2 of the game. So yeah, a lot of those buffs might hit there. Honestly, that's a lot of power for your opponent to have to commit into there, especially as you're going to continue discarding Scorn for the rest of the game, and those +2s might still hit that location. Not least to say that you've now got this 110 power Scorn, which you'll be able to play on the end of the game. Sometimes winning with Bar Sinister is actually how you can synergize and boost power into the rest of your location. So for example, Gwenpool on Bar Sinister I absolutely love, because it gives you so much power in the other locations, so consider that. And Cloning Vats is very interesting. You can discard Scorn a few times, get this extra power, maybe a 1/6 or whatever, play her on there, so you're capitalizing from getting that extra power on the board, but then putting it back into your hand to either repeat again on Cloning Vats or to discard and get different blah blah blah. And Kiln, because Scorn, again, she's a low cost, potentially high power card, so you can discard her probably a couple of times by turn 4, and try and secure that location with essentially a demon. Cool. Bad locations, Sakaar. Sakaar might pull Scorn. That's going to feel absolutely horrendous. And Mindscape, you're potentially giving your opponent a 1-6, 1-8, 1-10, 1-12, whatever it may be. But you don't want that to happen. So play her before turn 6 in Mindscape games. Let's talk about the counters. We always seem to have the same cards on the counter section. But Shadow King yet again rears his ugly head. Although this is like the same thing we've said the last several times that we've featured Shadow King. In that he can take down Scorn's power, and or he can take down some of the power that she has distributed across the locations. But presumably, because you've gone wide with the buffs from Scorn, Shadow King can't address all of them. Killmonger, of course, going to directly kill Scorn, so you basically don't want priority on the final turn. But Scorn's going to be spitting out loads of power, so you may well have priority. Cosmo, of course, is just going to stop the vital discards that you want to do. That's going to be particularly damaging. And one is Black Widow. If you've ever played Dracula or those specific discard style of decks, when you get hit with a Black Widow, it's damaging. It's degrading in a way. Dracula discarding Black Widow feels absolutely horrific. Going to be a similar thing with Scorn. You're going to try and want to discard Scorn. They'll stick a Widow's Kiss in your hand, or a Widow's Bite. One of the White Widow is Kiss, right? I think it's Widow's Bite. They're gonna stick a Widow's Bite in your hand, and you're gonna discard that instead of the Scorn. So it's gonna feel bad, man. I mean, the plus side is you do discard the card, so you don't have to play it. But yeah. Anyway, let's move on to key synergies and several deck ideas for you. These are all vaguely similar things because this is a very specific card. Scorn is incredibly specific. She is a discard card, and at that she does a very specific thing. So anyway, the actual key synergies, key cards. Blade, we've spoken about. She's often going to be ending up on the right hand side of your hand, so Blade's going to be easily be able to target her. Colleen Wing, probably just simply the best synergy with Scorn. She's almost always going to hit Scorn, and she herself is a 2/4. Oh my god, I've just hit puberty. Sorry about that. Water. Good. Swordmaster. Is this going to be an opportunity for Swordmaster? I've actually only got him in one of the decks here, but I really like it. Swordmaster was recently changed so that he discards an odd cost card. Scorn is an odd cost card. As I said at the start, the one thing I don't like is that if Scorn hits Swordmaster twice, it pushes him into Shang-Chi range, but he's already very high in power for the cost. 3/7, really good. 3/7 with the one buff from Scorn makes him a 3/9. That's really good. I don't know, this could be really cool. I'm excited for it. Dracula. Dracula could be a really interesting one with this, guys. You may have some sort of deck. I mean, we've actually got Dracula on one of these decks, so you may have one sort of deck which is discarding a lot or discarding amply. That's certainly one of the decks we're going to look at, is Miracle Scornbit. And maybe you literally get to the point where at the end of the game you're not actually going to play Scorn because you're going to leave Scorn for Dracula to nibble up. So you get the, let's say if you've discarded her a lot of times, so at least a 110, right? 112. Let's say you discard that with Dracula. They might be expecting more power than she's putting out. Boom. Dracula goes for like a 13, 14 power. He might then get the buff from Scorn, puts him up to 16 power. Or the buff goes on someone else. That's an additional thing. But remember, guys, this is all in addition to something else that you're doing. You're also playing something else at time. It may be a Modoc. Maybe a Modoc to ensure that the only thing in your hand is the Scorn. So you've played the 8. You've given an additional 2 to Scorn when she returns to your hand, and then Dracula discards that. You get the power from that, and then you get an additional 2 on one of your cards as well. Really cool. I've also got Modoc here, of course, and one thing you may be surprised to see is Gilgamesh. Scorn is going to be spitting out lots of different buffs amongst your locations, and Gilgamesh loves that sort of thing. So maybe Gilgamesh is going to be an interesting card to play with Scorn, especially as we said earlier, we need to think about 5 cost cards that synergize well with Scorn, because we're going to be wanting to play Scorn as well. So maybe Gilgamesh with that plus, well, 3, 4, 5 cards you've got with additional buffs. Maybe that's enough, like a 14 power card as Gilgamesh. Maybe that's pretty cool. But let's talk about these specific decks. The first one I've got for you is called Thrift Card. The idea of this deck is that you want to discard Scorn multiple times. There's ways to duplicate the effects of your discards. So a couple of the easy ways we've got to discard Scorn specifically is Blade and Colleen. So we're often going to be able to target her. We've also got ways to duplicate that effect with Grandmaster and Absorbing Man. However, we've also got Swordmaster in here. We've also got Symbiote Spider-Man in here. So there's like 3 ways to re-trigger your discards. And there's like a couple of easy ways to discard Scorn. Like Colleen is the easiest way to discard Scorn. Maybe sort of Blade. But there's lots of different lines that you can couple together here. Let's say you're very lucky and you get Scorn on the right hand side of your deck on turn 1. Your turn 1 is Blade. Your turn 2 can then be Grandmaster if you want. Or it can be Colleen Wing. Because Scorn will still be the lowest cost card in your deck. Your turn 3 could either be Swordmaster, or it could be Grandmaster and Blade, or it could be some other combination of something. Anyway, there are ways to absolutely hammer the discard here. However, if you don't hit those specific lines, and like maybe you've got a Blade and it would line up with a Swarm, you can do that. You can discard Swarm. At the end of the game, you're going to have a free 6 power that you can play, and then you just go out the rest of your vibes. Now, because we've got 4 powerful 4-cost cards in the deck, we've also got Zabu in here. So Zabu can help you to get out one of your 4 costs on turn 3. That might be valuable. You might want to get out Symbiote Spider-Man, and then on turn 4, you could do something like Blade and Swordmaster and Symbiote Spider-Man, which gives you like 3 triggers on Scorn in 1 turn. You can play Silver Samurai just at a random time. Maybe it hits your Wolverine instead. Again, you get extra free power. So Thrift. This deck is thrifty because you get a lot of free power. And also just Gwenpool in here. I love the Gwenpool and Swarm interaction. Also, Gwenpool and Scorn is going to feel good because you're going to be able to get that extra power on a card that is so cheap and has so much power already from all the discard. This is going to be a really fun deck. Really fun indeed. Next up, Miracle Scornbit. This is a combination between the words Scorn and Gambit, isn't it? I've put them together and they create the word Scornbit. This is basically like the machine gun discard, the Miracle discard style deck that we see. So we've got in here the combo wombo that you want to hit is Wong, Mystique. I know some of the like machine gun, like the super intense Miracle discard style decks, they've got like Onslaught in there. We've just got those 2 to create your mega vibes element. And then on top of that, you basically play MODOK or Colleen or whatever combination you can do. Like, I guess actually like the point is Gambit really. So you can actually do Gambit and Colleen or Gambit and Blade, that sort of thing. Anyway, the point is, before, with this style of deck, the machine gun deck, is Gambit would play out and destroy all of their cards. Now, obviously, you still want to try and aim for an element of that with this deck, but the benefit to discarding Scorn instead of Swarm, by the way, we do have Swarm in this deck for redundancy, but the benefit to doing Scorn... Sorry, that was weird, I just had to... Sorry, that was just weird. But the benefit to doing Scorn is that instead of just destroying their stuff and all their stuff, and that's how you win the game, Scorn is going to be spitting out power. So hopefully you can win in that different way. And the combination of destroying some of their cards and spitting power onto the same location is an imbalance, and that's how you win the game. Cool. It's going to be an interesting one. We've also got Collector and Morbius in here who can just go tool themselves with all this stuff that you're adding to hand and discarding. So yeah, it's going to be cool and interesting. And finally, Discard New Dump. This is a deck that I actually played semi-religiously for a train journey to Blackpool. I took basically a 4-hour train journey earlier in the year, and I played this deck non-stop. Well, not this deck, because this has got Scorn in, but a version of this deck. The idea of it is, you try and hit a discard with either Scorn or Swarm, whatever. You ideally want to get Gwenpool out, because you also want to duplicate Gwenpool with either Grandmaster or Absorbing Man, and get all of these buffs on cards like Wolverine, on cards like Proxima Midnight, on obviously your Swarm. X-23 is in here as well. Basically, it's not that with this particular version, it's not the end of the world if you hit clean wing on X23. It is what it is. You've got quite a lot of expensive cost cards, like, yeah, Absorbing Man would be fine to play after that. Ghost Rider would be fine to play after that, potentially. I will explain the Ghost Rider element in a minute. But basically, you pump your hand full of buffs to, on the final turn, you do Modok, and in this version you can do Modok and Scorn, and then Modok discards your absolutely hugely powered, like, Wolverine, Proxima Midnight, X23 hopefully, and you also play your free Scorns as well. So basically you inject loads of free massive power onto the board at the end of the game, which is super sick, super cool. Now the Ghost Rider flair in here. Ghost Rider can be interesting. It's almost like insurance against a Blade. If you've got Blade and you've just got a difficult hand, so you might have Gwenpool, you might have Modok, you might have Absorbing Man, just Blade it out, man. If you've got Ghost Rider in your hand, just Blade it out, wait the next turn, or do it the next turn, depending on when this is happening for you, and then just Ghost Rider out. Ghost Rider is just the extra 4 power. Yeah, if you blade your Gwenpool, and then the next turn you can Ghost Rider it. You just played 10 power and you're pumping 6 power into your deck. Into your hand, I should say. So yeah, kind of just insurance, kind of just cool. And also it's just nice to play Ghost Rider. You don't get many opportunities to play Ghost Rider, so I thought it might be fun in this. And of course, I don't think I mentioned, like, yeah, you got Grandmaster to duplicate your discards or your buffs or whatever you want to do. So, moving on to star ratings. I do think that overall, Scorn is a 3.5 star card. I'm personally so excited for her that I am buying the card with tokens and then spending cashes to get the variant. I love her. I love this style. Just this style of card I just love. A very specific thing in discard. It's cool. It just plays into my gameplay style and what I like to do very, very well. However, yeah, overall 3.5. I think in the archetype, I think she's 3.5. I think she's definitely going to enhance certain styles of decks and be good in it. She's just not going to be like a mandatory inclusion. Because of her specificity, there is an element that you need to build around her. Like you basically need to be conscious of the end of your game. So you want the 5 cost cards, not the 6 cost cards. So yeah, she's not going to fit into everything. For fun, I've given her 4 stars. I think she's going to be incredibly fun. She is a big Endolphins card. Not only every time you play her, you're releasing Endolphins, but also playing her at the end of the game, a 1/10 or whatever she's going to be, that is a huge Endolphins play. So definitely a fun card. Competitive though is probably where I come in lowest. I think she's 3 stars. Do these decks that I just highlighted to you, do I really think they're going to be particularly competitive? I'm not sure. Don't get me wrong. I do not think she's bad. Obviously just said I'm really excited for her. But I do worry a bit with just how penetrative she will be to the meta. So ultimately, is she a snap or pass? I actually kind of think she's a pass in general. But if you're a discard player, she is a snap. So, do you play discard? She's like an auto get. If you're not interested in discard and you're not really interested in learning that style of deck or playing that style of deck, you just don't want to do it, then ultimately, yeah, maybe she's a pass. But for me, she is a snap, just to be clear. She is a snap. For me, for you, maybe a pass. I hope I've made that clear. I think I haven't. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Check out your local environment, interact with it, get some fresh air from time to time. Go for a walk and play Snap. Go to the park, sit on a swing and play Snap. What am I saying? This is weird. See you next time.